Welcome to episode 12 of the Movie Guide Podcast. I'm Jordan, and I'm here with my co-host Greg.
Hello.
Haven't seen you in 2 weeks, right? I've been
we
gone for the
Christmas
holidays
vacation.
and stuff, so...
Doing the college
I
thing.
bet you've missed me big time.
Oh, totally.
The apartment's
I couldn't
been
sleep
empty
at night
without
you.
apartment's been empty without me.
Sad and boring.
Speaking of which, Happy New Year to everyone, and we hope that you've all had good holidays, whatever it is that y'all choose to celebrate.
2016.
2016. And we've been doing this for, 4 or 5 months now?
So 3 episodes a month, and we've skipped a few weeks. So yeah, we're pushing 4+ months.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So today is the top 10 of 2015 lists. Been a good year for movies.
It has.
relatively.
It was tough to narrow down.
I know. I was just watching you make your list, and you were struggling a little bit. You took at least as much time as I did to make my list.
Yeah. I my first list had about 22 titles.
Yeah, that's
on
about
it.
where I was at. I was at 21 or 22.
And I couldn't believe, just nicking off 2 or 3 of those was hard.
Yeah.
So
These
lists are carefully composed.
Oh yeah, we spent time on these. We didn't just throw them together because it's pretty much impossible to do that. The top 10 worst of the year was a lot easier to do.
I bet.
That was because there were only like 12 movies on that list, so I had to narrow that down to 10. That was a lot easier. So we're gonna do this in the same way we did our top 10 Spielberg a couple months back. I don't know if we have same listeners from then, but the way we did it was we each did our 10 through 7s and talked about those movies just a little briefly. And then we alternated one by one for 6 through 1, so we talk about those a little bit more. If one of us has a movie a lot higher on their list, then we'll save our conversation on that particular movie for when the other person has it on their list.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but when I was making my list, what I really looked at the most was what entertained me the most and what I enjoyed the most, and then also looked at things like, what's rewatchable, what I thought about a movie when I originally saw it, and what I think now, like how has my opinion changed, because for some of these it's been a year since I've seen them,
right.
So, if my opinion's changed, all that kind of thing, how many times I've wanted to go revisit it.
That was kind of hard too, the time problem, at least for me, because like a movie I just saw, for example, Star Wars, is still really fresh,
Right.
really exciting, and something I saw a year ago, even if I liked it, I'm thinking Mad Max.
Yeah,
Like that.
I rewatched
Good
some
movies,
of these
but
recently.
their time.
Like last night, I actually just watched Mad Max again because I got it on DVD for Christmas, and but I also looked at the movie as a whole, as a overall film. How was it? That's a little bit smaller. Like some people will take it like movies are pure works of art, and that's what they want to look at. And other people's take it, I'm there to be entertained. I'm much more on that side of things, but I do try and look at the movie itself, and so that had a small impact on my list a little bit. Revenant and Hateful Eight, limited release in 2015, but we have not. I saw Hateful Eight yesterday, but that was January 1st. We're recording this on the 2nd, so those movies not going to be on our list.
Unfortunately, even though they'll be in award season, they won't be on.
The Hateful Eight is very good. Just reviewed that yesterday. Very good movie.
I gotta see it,
and I'm really excited to see The Revenant next week.
See it
next week. All right, let's kick it off. You want to kick off number 10?
All right, my number 10, Southpaw.
Southpaw made your list. Didn't make mine.
Why?
Because there's another boxing movie, Creed, that I liked a lot more, and that one made my list. So, for the sake of variety, and Southpaw is something that's kind of fallen off a little bit for me. I have a little bit more problems with the movie now than I did when I originally saw it. Especially after talking to you, you mentioned a couple plot things to it. I was like, yeah. I mean, we'll try not to spoil too much in this.
To be honest with you, I don't even remember what I told you. I can remember maybe one thing I told you.
There might be minor spoilers in here, but nothing that's going to ruin any of these movies. So,
except maybe one of them. We'll get there. The reason why I put Southpaw in here at all, first of all, I think it is a very good movie.
It's a good movie.
It's a fun movie, but for me in particular, the reason it got here, not honorable mentions, is because it was the first sports-esque, I don't know I guess you call boxing sports, right? It's the first sports movie I've liked in a very long time.
Fair enough.
And I'm typically not into sports at all. Like Moneyball, I liked because it was a lot more about the politics and the world behind baseball and not about the baseball. Mm-hmm. that's kind of where I am when it comes to sports usually. And Southpaw was about a guy's life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big sports guy. I love watching sports and all the sports movies. This one was really good. What I really liked about this movie was Gyllenhaal's performance in this was fantastic, as always.
He was fun to watch, and I liked the metaphor of the boxing for his life.
Right.
To sort of get back into his life going the way he wanted to, he had to kind of defeat his enemy, and in this case, on the boxing side, it was an actual person. It was a rival, and in the world, it was getting his daughter back.
Right.
And that just really resonated with me.
Yeah, I think I've gone back and revisited it since I've watched it in the theaters. It was in my honorable mention somewhere, but not. I don't think it really competed for the list. What's your number 9?
My number 9?
Yeah.
Are we? I thought we're not ping-ponging till
10 through 7. Yeah.
Okay. My number 9, Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Holmes, I still haven't seen.
How have you missed that?
You've recommended me watching it a couple times, and it's been on my list, and I just haven't had the time to get around and watch it.
So Mr. Holmes, what did it for me was they took a common story, or I say common, a story that gets talked about a lot. Sherlock Holmes, some guy is really smart and solves crimes, right? We've seen a lot of that recently in television and movies, and what they did then is advanced it by about 40 years and went into the end of this guy's life and how his sort of little scenarios about, he becomes a beekeeper, and he's dealing with much more modern times than he's used to. So there's like cars on the street, and there's radios and all these things that are new to him, and he's also dealing with his memory loss that's starting to kick in, and it plays out in this kind of drama with him, his housekeeper, and her son, and he and the boy have a really great relationship. And meanwhile, he's telling the story of his last case to the boy, and there's this fun back and forth and flashbacks, and it's just really great. And Ian McKellen just knocks it out of the park.
I know I need to watch it. I mean, I got a couple days off coming up where I'm not working or anything, so maybe I'll be able to catch up on some of the stuff that I know I missed, including.
I mean, just a lot of these movies. I think the more artsy sort of awarded. What did you say a minute ago? You had a word. Well, anyway, the ones that are really gunning for awards are just good. They're really good.
Yeah, I mean, I usually use we were talking about it earlier. I use January and early February as kind of a catch-up time for all these movies that are under consideration for awards that I know that I'm going to hear about come Oscar season that I need to watch. Last year I didn't do as good a job. Like, I still haven't seen Birdman, which won last year. So
I loved Birdman.
But this year I'm going to try and do a better job of making sure I'm caught up on a lot of those movies. Not all of them, obviously, because some of them I'm just flat out not interested in. So I'm not going to sit there and watch the movie, but so I'll catch up on stuff like that, hopefully, within the next couple weeks.
Number 8?
Number 8?
Spectre.
Spectre made your list.
It did, and I'll tell you why. It was very cinematically fun. It was a beautiful film to watch.
I really enjoyed the movie. I know a lot of people have had a lot of problems with it.
And I'll tell you why. It's because most people, I think, today are not schooled on the earlier Bond movies. And it seems to me, and you pointed this out to me, which I would have never known otherwise because I wouldn't have even cared to investigate, there are connections to the beginnings of, let me rephrase, the roots of James Bond.
Yeah.
And there just aren't enough people, I think, to appreciate that.
I think
because you said like that big reveal, you sat up in your seat.
Yeah, I mean that was a big moment
and
for
me.
And
I wouldn't have even known that it was a big reveal if you hadn't clued me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it didn't make my list. It was an honorable mention, but I think I even enjoyed the film more than you did when we saw it.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, because it was very reminiscent of older Bond films. It was a slower film than something like Skyfall, and I think that was why a lot of people didn't like it. They're used to this newer version of Bond we have where it's just crazy stuff going on the whole time. And I like Skyfall just fine. It's one of my favorite Bond films. Mm-hmm. But this movie's a different one, and I liked it for that, and I liked a lot of the stuff in it. Particularly
what I liked about Spectre was the way they introduced everybody.
Right.
The first 20, 30 minutes of that movie are just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Especially the first shot, the long tracking shot.
I still think about the music from that. It still sticks in my head. At any rate, Spectre was good, and I just really love Daniel Craig. I love watching Daniel Craig. Did you know Fun fact: Daniel Craig had a cameo in Star Wars.
I did. I heard that before I saw it the third time. I think I've seen Star Wars 3 times now.
I've seen it 3 times last night, and it will probably be a 4th and maybe even a 5th.
He's without giving away any spoilers, he's a stormtrooper that has a little bit of a fun moment with one of the characters.
Was he actually there, or did he just simply voice it?
No, he was actually
in the suit. That's cool, man.
There's several people that have cameos.
I didn't catch on to that in that moment until my brother leaned over to me last night and goes, that's Daniel Craig. And I said, no.
Yeah.
And then all I had to do, as soon as he said it, the voice clicked. And I was like, that's awesome.
I read about it, and so the next time I went and saw the movie, I was really focused on it. I was like, not only, I mean, the voice is a little hard to tell coming through the mask, but what got me is that he's got that walk, he's picked up that kind of James Bond swagger a little bit. So
I didn't catch on that, but the way he says words.
His humor and stuff, I definitely picked up on it. It's a cool little...
I caught the James Bond sort of, he has a little, at the end of his sentences, he always puts a little bit of irony into the words he says, and picked up on that. But now I want somebody out there on the internet, because I know this happens all the time, to create a theory of universes that links Star Wars and James Bond now.
Go for it.
How could Daniel Craig's James Bond end up into the
somebody with more time than us, I guess. All right, 7.
Number 7, Everest.
Everest, huh?
Here again, this is the strongest determiner of things was, do I want to watch this movie again? And I sure do. I loved Everest. And I'll tell you why. Jake Gyllenhaal, one of my favorites, is in there.
Jason Clarke is good as well, the main guy.
There's just a lot of fun. And it's the story of an adventure, and they're in it.
Survival.
And when you think about it, there is no practical reason to climb Mount Everest, or to climb any mountain for that matter. So why are they doing it? It becomes more of a human story. It becomes more about what it means to be human, like conquering something, exploration, and just doing something no one's ever done before, challenging yourself, your personal goals. And then when things go wrong in the story, which inevitably it has to, they have this great story about survival. People make really selfless choices to save other people, and I just really...
It was a really good movie. We saw it a while back.
And visually stunning.
Oh, visually
you feel
great,
like you are there.
Probably one of the best visual films of the year. You throw that up there with, I'd say, like The Martian and even Star Wars and stuff like that. They've all been...
and a lot of that's the other thing. A lot of those shots were practical.
Yeah.
Because they're flying over Everest with helicopters. Well, I say over, up to. They can't fly very high.
Great movie. Did make my list. It's on our honorable mention. Okay. This is going to be interesting because...
Yeah, we're starting to eliminate stuff real fast.
So far, we've gone through 4 movies on your list. None of them are on my list. So we're going to have different... I thought we would have different lists, but this is a lot more different than I thought it was going to be. My number 10 is... I did this... I mean, I really enjoyed this movie, but, I had about 3 or 4 that were really battling for the 10th spot. And, I enjoyed them pretty close to equal, so that kind of canceled out. They're all great movies overall. So what I ended up choosing was really to add a little bit of variety to my list. I got a bunch of blockbusters, so I went a little bit smaller, different genre. So number 10 is It Follows.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Ant-Man or something.
No.
So It Follows is... Wait, hold on. Before I put my foot in my mouth.
Is it higher on your list, or is it on your honorable mentions?
Wait a second. I may have goofed, buddy. Where did it go? It fell off the list. It was supposed to be... Okay, well, this is like... We'll call this 7.5. It should have been on my list. Damn it. I'm kind of mad at myself.
So you were the first one to screw up.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you why. The podcast isn't scripted. The reason why it fell off is when I was... It's hard for me to juggle stuff in my head over...
Right.
When you're making a list of things that you can't physically move around. But at any rate, I would have put it pretty... Maybe, if not in the 10 through 7, it would have been a very close 11. I really liked It Follows.
The reason it didn't make it any higher is, I like these other films a lot more just because the horror genre is not something that I like to go back and revisit by myself. There are movies I like to watch with other people, but it's not something that I'm going to be like, you know what, am I going to watch Die Hard for the 1,000th time, or am I going to watch It Follows? I'm probably going to watch Die But it is a very good movie, and I think one that's even grown on me more since we originally watched it back when we were doing our Countdown to Halloween podcast, and we talked about this movie a lot. You know, the way it's shot and the way it uses its intensity and its tension, and you know, using stuff in the background of shots to scare you rather than just pulling the cheap jump scares out of everywhere. Really enjoyed that aspect of the movie. It's probably the best horror movie since The Conjuring.
I was just thrilled by this movie, which is really why I'm kind of bummed out that I completely goofed, and I'm looking now to see how the heck this happened. But yeah, I would have put it pretty high. In fact, now that I'm looking at how this list got made, it probably should have made my number 6, so I can still fix that, I suppose. But yeah, at any rate, it's what's so great about it is this is what I like about stories in general. I like to think that the story was happening before I got there, and the story continues after I leave. And you sort of, imagine yourself in an airplane and you're just dipping down to surface level for a little bit. You come into the middle of a story, and you've got this boyfriend and his girlfriend, and they're making out, they're having their first sort of conjugal experience, and then all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden you're in it. You're in the mix. Stuff's happening, and you don't know everything yet. You don't have to know everything yet. Weird stuff's going on, and that makes it you feel even more uncomfortable because you're in this. You're supposed to be a scary movie. It's really good, and then at the end of it, there is no resolution.
Yeah, it's got sort of like open-ended ending to
it. And then when it just this is a big spoiler, and I gotta pause this thing for a minute if you want or skip. When it pops up at the end, it follows the text, and you realize. That's it. Like, there is no solution to this.
Right.
You simply pass it on.
Right. It's a very good. It's a fresh idea, which you don't get in this genre a lot.
It wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
I was very pleased with it.
Yeah, it's a very good movie. Definitely top 3 of the 2000s in terms of horror movies for sure.
I think they broke a couple or committed a couple horror movie sins for me, and that was they had a couple jump scares.
They had a couple, but
that were a little dumb.
Yeah.
The scene where they're in the little shack.
Yeah, then
the face pops up in the door. I mean, come on, anybody could guess that.
Yeah, but it has less than most of these movies do, and it was a fresh idea. Did a lot of fun things to scare you in other ways, which was perfect for this kind of movie. I really enjoyed it. My number 9 might surprise you that it's on my list at all. Is Inside Out.
Oh wow! It is on my list.
Is it higher on yours? Okay, we'll save the conversation and I'll talk about why it's on my list then.
We can do this. It's my number 6.
Okay, well let's talk about it. Let's talk about it now. Yeah. This is one of those movies that I enjoyed when I saw it, but was like, it's not really my cup of tea. This movie has grown on me like few movies do. I mean, I think I gave it like 3 or 3.25 when I reviewed it. Back when it came out, man, I'd probably give that movie 4.5 now.
It's totally rewatchable.
Oh, I've revisited, I've rewatched it. I don't usually do that with a lot of animated movies. They have to be something like the Lego Movie or Finding Nemo or something like that for me to revisit. And I've rewatched this movie and it's fantastic. It's got great messages in it for kids. You hear about listen to some of the things I've listened, how people's kids have started using this movie. I have to bring my joy out when I'm
to talk about their feelings. I was talking to a therapist who said that this movie is spot on with a lot of things, and is gotten a lot of this the sort of the way the models of the way therapists and other people in the psychological world think about because your brain works a certain way, but your psyche, your sort of personality works in a different way, and that's I guess this nailed it. And they love to use it with kids apparently because those are sort of those I guess it was 5 core emotions. Yeah. Are kind of anyway, it's just I like that a lot.
Really good movie. You got a good story. It's got some emotional moments in it. They're really good.
And they hit on a point that I think is so critical for a younger person, not necessarily a kid, but even just a younger in terms of maturity. To realize is that a moment does not have to be completely happy or completely sad or anything like that. You can have these moments, the happy sad moments where the girl thinks about her parents, and that drives her to go back home.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whew, tearing up about it just thinking about it.
Very, very good movie. I wish that I had seen that a little earlier, especially when I reviewed it. Wish I had give it a little bit of higher score because now it's kind of permanently. I've said that it's an okay movie, but
You should go back into some of these when you do have a revision. Don't change the core of your review. Just add a little addendum saying 6 months out, this is how I feel about it.
I might do that. That's a good
that'd
idea.
be an
That's a good
interesting way
idea.
to work the podcast.
Maybe
or the
write a re-review or something like that. Or review it again. I don't know, but that
sounds like something you could do, like a single end of the year.
yeah.
Here's the 5 movies that I've revisited.
Yeah. My number 8, and I almost hate myself for having it on the list, especially this high. I cannot tell you why I love this movie so
I
much.
know what you're gonna say.
It's Jurassic World.
Oh, I don't know what you were gonna say. I was thinking something else. Let's talk about that. Well, it's my number 5.
It's higher on. It's,
Yeah, it's higher.
really?
Do you
Because
want
you
me
did
to?
not like this movie when you first saw
This
it.
is my grow on me movie.
All right, we'll talk about that when
No,
we get to
wait,
number
okay,
5. Yeah,
we'll
we'll wait
wait.
on that one. So my number 7, I got a feeling it might be a little higher on your list, is Ex Machina.
Not on my list.
Not on your list at all.
Not on my list.
Really?
Not even
Why is
honorable
that?
mention.
Why is that?
It should be an honorable mention. I suppose I try to limit my honorable mentions to about 5, but because it's rewatchability. I don't feel like that movie's rewatchable.
And that's why it's not higher on my list. I really
Was it good? Yes.
Really-
Should you see it? Yes.
really loved this movie the first time I saw it. It's 3 movies I've given a 5 out of 5 to this year, and this is one of them. The other 2 are higher on my list because those movies are more rewatchable. This one I really love the first time. You know, it's fresh to the genre. It's got some great performances in it. As an overall film, this movie's probably top 3 of the year, I would say, as an overall movie.
Really.
Um,
I'd put it in the top maybe 10.
no, I'd put it in
terms
the
of style
top
and
3.
stuff.
But I've watched it a second time. It doesn't have quite the same impact because
You know the secrets.
it's got a lot of twists and turns in it. That it's
That's
not that they don't.
the hazard with a movie like that.
It's not that they don't have an impact the second time. It's just it's not quite as big, so it's not quite as rewatchable. So that I really wanted to put it higher. You know, this probably deserves to be top 3, 4 in there somewhere. But just because I haven't wanted to revisit it a third time, I probably will at some point. But you know, it's just a really good movie that just doesn't quite get there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's on my list, and I'm glad it's on my list because it's a great movie. But
Okay.
So your number 6 was.
Did you do 7?
That was my number 7.
Oh, okay.
Your number 6 we talked about, it was
Inside Out.
So my number 6 is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Oh, dude. Okay, so just audience members, I went through a list recorded on the internet of every movie that came out. This is the pitfalls of this, I suppose. Every movie that came out this year, and it was really hard because they showed all the. There's probably a better place to go for this.
Oh yeah,
for
there
next
was a
time.
better place.
Okay. Well, anyway, this had all the movie posters,
Mm-hmm.
cover images, and sometimes it was hard to pick a movie out.
Did you miss
I
Mission
missed
Impossible?
Mission Impossible. That doesn't. I don't know that it would have made my list though. I liked it. It would have hit maybe honorable mentions. It was just simply a fun movie.
This is one that was really fun the first time, and I enjoyed it the first time. It has grown on me a little bit because it's very rewatchable to me. I've rewatched it probably 3 times now since it came out.
I felt like this one got back to kind of the older Tom Cruise, because the one just before that, the one with the Dubai tower,
Mm-hmm.
that one, Tom Cruise felt weird.
Oh, really? That's my favorite of the Mission Impossible. Still is Ghost Protocol.
Really?
This one's my
I
second
like
favorite.
Ghost Protocol a lot. I like the one, and I'm gonna blank on the title.
3. Mission Impossible 3. I
With
think.
Philip Seymour
Yeah, that's the
Hoffman.
one that you like.
Yeah, I just love
That's
movie.
that one's right behind this one. I think this one just, you know, some of the stunt work in this is just incredible to me. That I think is what makes this movie more than anything.
Motorcycle chase.
Oh,
Come
all
on.
practical stunts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Tom Cruise doing all of it. He does a lot of it
Yeah.
in this movie, which is impressive.
Yeah, he
Beyond impressive.
basically flies on the side of an airplane.
Yeah, but
that's crazy.
but yeah, I mean, some of those scenes, you're like, I can't believe that people are actually doing this. These people are insane. You know, it's got some really good scenes and really memorable scenes more than anything. You know, sometimes you watch a movie and you like it, but then it kind of falls off as not really memorable. This is not one of those movies. You remember some of these scenes, just be able to pick them out, or at least I do. So that's why it makes it just outside of my top 5. Some of these other films I like a little bit more, but it's my number 6. So I think we're at your number 5, which is Jurassic World. I cannot believe that it's this high on your list.
It's grown and grown and grown, and I watched it again last night, or 2 nights ago. Yeah, it's not a good movie.
It's not. That's
Let me
why-
rephrase. That's doing a disservice. It is a good. If I
It's not a good.
separate it away from the legacy of Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, I think, is a decent film.
I wouldn't even
However,
go that
it
far.
commits a lot of sins.
I mean,
It-
if we're being completely honest with ourselves and looking at it as a movie, it's got terrible characters, dialogue's not very good. Movie doesn't make a lick of sense, like the whole plot
No.
details. But God, I love this movie.
Yeah,
I've-
just so many dinosaurs. I like. Okay,
I saw it 2 or 3 times in theaters.
did you really? I
I've
only saw
seen-
it once.
I've seen it at least 3 times since. I love this movie, and I can't for the life of me figure out. I love Chris Pratt in this movie. I love him in anything. I'm excited for anything he's going to be doing in the future. I'm on board. I'm on the Chris Pratt train right now. He can do no wrong. All the dinosaur fighting stuff was just
the
crazy.
things that really move this movie into like just blah territory sometimes for me, and that's not to say that's not fun. Again, it is fun to watch. It's the fact that the spoilers. It's the fact that the raptors somehow talk to each other and talk to the other dinosaurs. You know what I mean? There's this feeling of they're communicating, and it's just like, come on.
all right. This movie doesn't make any sense. We've
Yeah.
established
Yeah.
that, but so much fun.
So much.
So much fun. This is why I go to the movies, especially in the summertime.
This was
is to watch
a
stuff like this.
popcorn movie. This
Yeah.
was great.
I didn't want to put it on my list just because of an overall movie. It's not a very good movie, and I know a lot of people don't like this movie at all, and I can't really fault them for it. Like some, we'll get to later, Star Wars. You know, some people haven't liked it, and I will defend that movie to my dying breath. This
You
movie,
can't defend it. It's indefensible.
this movie, if you were to argue and say it's a bad movie,
You'd have to agree.
I would agree with everything you're saying, but I just had a blast watching it, and so that's why it makes my list, and obviously it makes yours
It's
a bit higher.
visually very beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
I loved just when you get close up shots of some of these dinosaurs, and you're hard pressed to find the seams on this.
Mhm.
It's very good.
Good movie. So what are we at now? We at my number 5, I think, because we just did your number 5. My number 5 is a movie I have a feeling is not on your list. Is Sicario.
Honorable mention.
I loved this movie a lot more than you because you didn't like the end at all.
No,
And
that's kind of the end. Believe it or not, spoiled it for me.
I thought that the end was perfect. I thought the whole movie was fantastic. This movie, and I won't really spoil it, this movie might have the most intense and well shot scene of any movie this year, and I'm just going to call it the highway scene so you know what I'm talking about. Anybody who's seen the movie knows what I'm talking about, but doesn't spoil anything.
Yeah.
Most well shot,
Tense as anything.
most intense scene in any movie this year, I would
Do you
say.
think that was better than the opening shot for Spectre?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Just because while Spectre was a great, tracking shots, it never really built like an intensity like this movie, like the one in Sicario did. They're probably equally shot in terms of like the way the camera is and all this stuff. And this one's longer too. I mean, this whole scene, if you take it as a whole rather than just the one part of it, is like 20 minutes long. It's a significant portion of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's just outstanding. I mean, the movie itself got a great story. It's another fresh kind of, and this is a little bit lower budgeted movie. Emily Blunt is great in it. Benicio del Toro is great in it.
It really plays on tension and suspense,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, just a skill that's harder and harder to just.
It's very
Yeah.
well directed, very
Yeah.
well shot. I guess the cinematography is
Beautiful.
the word. Yeah, I mean, dialogue's great. Feels really realistic. Because in some movies you feel like you're in a movie, other times you feel like these people are actually having a conversation. That's what I felt like in this movie.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't get that. I didn't get pulled out of the movie by the dialogue. Like
Right.
sometimes I do.
And you learn a lot about this cartel world that these people are living in and fighting against. Stuff that we're so far away from up here, but down there it's like every day it's this kind of thing, and it's disturbing and fascinating at the same time. So that's why I enjoyed this movie so much. It's my top 5.
Definitely a good film.
If the ending had been more to your liking, do you think it would have made it onto your list?
Yeah. I don't want this one. I think is a big deal. I don't want to spoil this.
Okay, well, we'll just.
But I'll leave it that the movie does something. I think there's some. I keep calling them sins. There's some things that I think you don't break in a movie.
Right.
And
I know what you're talking
you don't
about.
kill innocent people without giving some kind of reason.
To me, there was a reason, and that's the thing.
But you didn't. Okay, I guess we are going to spoil it. When he shoots the kids, I was pissed.
Yeah, I know.
In the same way that I was pissed. Did you see The Mist? Stephen King's The Mist?
I don't think I've seen it.
That is about a 6-year-old movie now, or even longer. The end of that movie is the same way. There's people die, and it ends up being completely pointless in that movie, and that's the point. I mean, that movie was setting up that experience, and so I'm a little better with that. But in this movie, you don't even know the characters that are getting shot. All they are is like garnish on your plate for the meal, which is this guy's getting revenge on another man. And that just pissed me off.
To me, it was this guy took his daughter from them, so it's an eye for an eye kind of thing. And
I mean, it was really brutal, and I'll give the movie that. They did.
This movie.
They went all the way.
And we've kind of spoiled it for anybody who's still listening that hasn't seen it yet. But
Sorry.
It's not.
You knew what you signed up for.
It's not for the faint of heart by any means. This movie's very realistic depicting this kind of thing,
and like there's we digress. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year, obviously. I think we're at year number 4.
The Good Dinosaur.
Really?
I loved it.
So
loved it.
How Inside Out has grown on me, The Good Dinosaur has gone the opposite direction. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very forgettable to me.
So there's some problems I have with the movie, storytelling wise, but it was visually very fun to watch. I liked a lot of the morals, and it was just an entertaining film, hands down. They went a different direction. It's for me, it's a new story, or at least a new way to tell a story. Let me rephrase. New story, no. A boy has to reconcile his
right.
He's got to grow up and become a man, basically.
But I know what you mean by.
But now you come at a world where dinosaurs have lived longer than humans, and so that humans are pets, basically. I love that. That's such a fun angle.
I mean, it's only been a month since I've seen this movie, maybe a little bit more than that, and barely even remember it.
I think it's interesting that Inside Out was scheduled to come after The Good Dinosaur, and it didn't. And The Good Dinosaur seems to have had some problems.
Yeah, it definitely went. It went through some production. The whole voice cast changed like halfway through. So they completely redid it.
That tells me that the movie had some issues. So given that, I'm a little more comfortable saying that I liked this movie, but it isn't. It's not the top tier movie. It's just really fun.
Yeah. I
don't know how to. I'm equivocating a lot here, and I didn't mean to.
So you like it more than Inside Out? Or? No.
Inside Out. I mean, gosh, it's tough because I did put Inside Out lower on my list, but The Good Dinosaur was just. It's dinosaurs, man.
I know, and that's I think that was what really hit me when I first saw the movie. Was I was thrown back in this world where I was a kid again, because when I was a kid for a good 5 years, I had that dinosaur phase that a lot of kids had. Mine was just a little bit more intense, where dinosaurs were the only thing I cared about. Yeah. So seeing this movie, I was a 9-year-old again. Like I was.
I'm coming to a lot of ideas as we talk here. The Good Dinosaur was less polished story wise.
Right.
It was more polished visually.
Visually, it was very good, but this is something that took me out of it a little bit while watching the film. Is the backgrounds are fantastic, in terms of water. Trees,
they're very realistic.
Grass, yes, but then the characters are so cartoon.
They're intentionally cartoonish. Yeah.
That it's almost jarring. It's
sometimes. So the square-headed dinosaur thing, which is for me that was very much like the mid 1950s look of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
The T-Rex had much more rounded or whatever shapes and all this sort of thing. Versus a more realistic version. It's when you have this like the water and the rocks are beautiful. There was times my sister and I, when we saw this, we were trying to decide, are these real scenes, real scenery that they've shot and just dropped the dinosaurs in on top of it. But some of those scenes are too idyllic to be real places. I think. I don't know. It was just. I think if I had to choose between the two right now, I would pick The Good Dinosaur to watch. And that's ultimately why, despite those movies being really good or really close,
was that you using my friend with DVD method right there?
It had to be. Yeah. It had to be because
for those who don't know,
I
don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast. I don't
take because I didn't know about it.
I don't take credit for this. I heard it from somebody else. But basically, a lot of times when I have to make these top 10 lists, I use the friend with DVDs method. And what that is if a friend showed up at your door with two movies that you're battling between and where to put them on a list, which one would you pick to watch? And that's the one that I go with.
That's one of those there. That got more for like that pushed a couple movies into the honorable mentions for me. Like number 10 was hard for me to pick, and we'll talk about that more when we get more into honorable mentions, but it definitely
I would definitely watch Inside Out in a heartbeat over Good Dinosaur. Yeah. I don't know what it is because I really enjoyed The Good Dinosaur when I saw it, but
you the only reason, well, not the only reason I saw it, one of the major reasons I saw it quickly was because you said you liked it.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what it is, but my number 4, yeah, that's what we're on, right? Number 4 is The Martian.
My number 3.
Figured it. I think I know what your top 3 are.
Interesting.
The Martian is probably not even a comedy, but it's probably the funniest movie of the year.
It was great.
I just rewatched it again because my dad had never seen it, so we watched it probably 4 or 5 nights ago now.
Yeah.
Really good movie, really fun movie to watch.
And Matt Damon.
Yeah, Matt Damon's great in this movie. Probably his best performance.
You know, the problems...
maybe Good Will Hunting's probably his best, but
it's a different time in his life,
yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard to compare those two.
That's true.
I would compare his performance here more with Interstellar, just because those movies are they're the same genre almost.
Yeah, I just don't like Interstellar very much.
Well, yeah, Interstellar took this more philosophical kind of darker angle, but anyway, he plays an astronaut in both. Right. Is where I was going for that. The things I disliked about The Martian had almost nothing to do with the movie itself. It had to do with the comparisons with the book,
which I've never read, so I didn't have that problem.
Well, and that's why I try not to think about them, because it's like we say all the time, movies got to stand alone. Yeah, but it got an enormous amount of the science correct. They talked. In fact, the orbits the orbits and the trajectories they talk about in the movie are real orbits and real trajectories. Mm-hmm. That if you are in the know, and I read a thing on Reddit about this. This guy went through and he calculated. He used the book because the book gives you all the numbers. He calculated the date for all these events, and then he sent that in a tweet over to the author. And the author got back to him and said, "Yep, you're right," because he wanted this to be, could these things really happen? Right. Now the technology the technology they use in the movie is a little more advanced than we're going to have in the next 10 or 15 years. But these are all, it's like something 2033 or something is when all these things could have happened.
I like this.
Pretty great.
I liked this movie the second time I watched it a few days ago more than I did the first time, because the first time. And definitely no spoilers for this one because it's not really that big a deal that we need to talk about it. But we've talked about it before. The ending it got a little too far-fetched for me, and I didn't like that. Well,
that's why.
The second time it didn't bother me as much. Maybe it's just because it wasn't as shocking. But
yeah, and in fact, the specific event you're talking about is when, in the book, he posits that as a funny. Like, oh, we could do this,
right.
Like, because it's almost absurd. Like, they've gotten so close,
right? And
there's this kind of fair chance that he might not make it,
right?
And so he posits this wild idea, just sort of as I can't believe we're fucking here, you know. And at any rate, and then in the movie they go ahead and do it, which I don't think was necessary. I mean, you're already having the time of your life in this movie. Do you really need to up the wow factor one more notch? You know, I don't know.
But I like the spin it took on the survival genre, because not only is this like a Castaway, he's on an island. And he went, at least Tom Hanks in Castaway had resources that he could use.
Well, and he didn't have to wear a spacesuit every day.
Matt Damon's completely on his own out there, and he's got to figure out...
In one of the most hostile environments man could ever encounter.
And I like how it poked fun almost at itself, because, of course, the guy that's left is a botanist and can grow his own food, but he kind of says that, and the movie kind of pokes fun at itself. He's like, so I got to figure out how to grow food on a planet where nothing grows, and he pulls a little notebook out that has his name and his rank on it, and it's like, luckily, I'm a botanist. Just the way he says it, it's like, we know this is kind of...
we're like, okay, we're gonna set the stage in favor of him, and then we're going to let it play out on its own. We're not going to change the rules after this. And that's what I call the magic bean of the movie. The movie gets its one thing.
Yeah.
One allowance. And after that, it's got to be internally consistent. And it did that very well.
Definitely great movie. Obviously, my fourth favorite movie of the year. And, I mean, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. I mean, these movies could all switch positions all they want.
Pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, these are some really good movies.
My 2 and 3 spot could have swapped and it would have been fine. My number 1 spot is far and away number 1.
I'm pretty sure I know what your number 1 is. Pretty sure it's also my number 1.
Yeah.
So what's your number?
Well, I just did my number 3, so you should do your number 3.
My number 3 is Mad Max. Guessing that's your number 2.
I'm really curious what your number 2 is now. So, Mad Max, man, what do you think?
Just watched it again last night, man. That's a fun movie. I mean, it somehow manages to be non-stop action, yet still have both story and character moments in it, which is incredible to me. My only real problem with the movie is not enough Max in the Mad Max movie.
Bizarrely, that doesn't bother me one lick.
It bothers me a little bit, just because I feel like Tom Hardy's a little wasted. Like, I feel like he's not a side character. He's like a co-main character. But
I liked that. It was a nice departure from the action hero typical sort of thing.
Right. My problem is it was almost like they wanted to have a really strong female character, but didn't believe they could do it all the way.
Okay. So that's Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
Right? I did not... The only quibble I had with that, if they had made her fit into the world a little better, her character does not have an accent that even remotely matches everybody else.
Right.
And that reminded me so much of the Robin Hood movie with Kevin Costner, where he...
Go way back on that one. That's
I am, and I'll tell you why that matters, is that they had so much trouble getting him to do a convincing accent. They just said, well, screw it, and he just had this thick American accent.
Oh,
in the movie,
even when he tries to do an accent, it's awful.
It's not good, and so
that movie's not very good at all.
Oh, I really like that movie.
Really,
when I was a kid, my mom and I watched that movie all the time.
Oh.
That was sort of our movie together.
Oh.
So I feel like Charlize Theron should have done that. And now here's the other thing: when she goes back and meets her, the family she never had, kind of thing, or whatever, the people she grew up with, if they spoke the same way. Well, you fixed it. That's all you had to do was fix it. Was say that it's we're so far in the future now that we've got these little pockets. I mean, we've got back to the world of you go 10 miles and you're in a completely new world in terms of the people there, just because you don't travel very far anymore. But they didn't even do that. So that's one of the few quibbles I have with the movie.
Well, we gotta stop talking about problems with the movie, though, because this movie's great. I mean, it's number 2 on your list, number 3 on my list.
It is, and that's how good it is I got one issue.
Yeah.
I loved the visuals. I loved the I'm forgetting my words here. Just the look of everything, the feel of everything. That steampunk, gritty, into the world, apocalyptic thing that they do.
My favorite thing, we mentioned it when we were talking about Mission Impossible, but the stunt work in this movie, because all this stuff is practical. You get
they built all those cars.
Yeah,
they're real.
And it's just
then they blew them up.
the polecat scene where they're swinging back and forth, man. All that stuff is real. And it's just incredible to watch. And that's the reason, man. Everybody talks about how great CGI is now. Whatever. You can tell. You can tell when something is done for real, and it makes the movie twice as good by itself, in my opinion. When you do something practically without using CGI or just using CGI to enhance certain things.
That's what I was just about to say. It's CGI is best used as a topping,
right?
As a flair to the reality, to the practical effect.
But when you do all this stuff for real, out somewhere in a desert, not on a soundstage, that is what makes the movie to me. And that was one of the reasons I love this movie so much, because I'm watching like, holy crap, like, I can't believe, I mean, these people, I think it would be cool to be a stuntman. I would not do any of the stuff that I saw in this movie, because these people are crazy.
They managed to take a movie in the desert and make you feel like you're out on the high seas.
Yeah.
You feel stranded, you're in your little land ship, you know, you're going through all these obstacles that nevertheless are still bare in the same way that when you're in the ocean, sometimes you got storms, sometimes you got doldrums, and sometimes you got pirates and islands. Well, here they're dealing with all those same kinds of ideas. And like the polecat thing, that was so interesting about that is it reminded me of swinging on ropes on a ship.
Right.
And anyway, everything's just big and chunky and overly elaborate. I love the fact that they've got this weird new culture that has been born out of
this religion kind of thing.
They basically worship water and metal and oil and like all the
chrome
industry. Yeah, it reminded me of Waterworld. Speaking of Kevin Costner.
And bad movies.
Yeah, Waterworld could have been done away, but Waterworld is, I think, it feels like a counterpoint to Mad Max. Mad Max did really well, and somebody tried to do a water version of it. But at any rate, it's just so fun to watch, and it's bright. The colors.
That's where the only real CGI in this movie is this kind of oversaturation of it, especially
well, that's not even CGI. That's just post effects. I mean,
but the reds and the yellows are really
it's oversaturated. Yeah. It's such a great way.
But what surprised me was I saw the first couple trailers for this, and I was like, yeah, okay, looks alright. Well, they've released like 1,000 trailers for this movie. I mean, there were trailers coming out all the time. And as more and more trailers come out, I was like, all right, this could be good. I'll go check it out. And then the movie blew me away when I saw it. I couldn't believe I liked it. I couldn't believe that everybody liked it as much as they did. Really, I mean, there are very few
the most unlikely people. My mom.
Really?
And
mom, I've never met your mom, but I don't think...
she's not... This is not... My mom likes Winnie the Pooh. You know what I mean? My mom likes cute kid movies and sappy romantic comedies. And my mom was into that. And that was, and she was also into Mission Impossible, which blew me away. I guess that makes sense because she grew up with Mission Impossible on TV. But at any rate, it's such a fun movie.
Yeah, it's my number 3 of the year, and I just happen to like these next two a little bit more. And yeah, so my number 2, because that was your number 2.
Yeah, you're just chasing me right up the ladder.
One behind you here, and I think that that's because you've not seen this movie yet, and that would be Creed.
That's what I figured.
A movie this is.
Sell me on it.
All right, so we talked about Ex Machina was a 5 out of 5. Creed was a 5 out of 5, if not above that, if that's possible. So the first time I saw it in theaters, I was like, all right, great movie, but I was wondering if maybe the theatrical experience itself affected my view of the movie because...
Oh, absolutely.
Because which isn't necessarily a problem, but when I'm trying to make this list, I'm like, all right, the movie itself.
How much does that matter
right.
for people who are going to watch this 5 months from now?
Right. So the first time I went, I was in a packed theater. It was opening night or opening weekend, I think. And so during all the boxing scenes, it was like, people were into stuff. It was like watching a boxing match with people. They were into like clapping and all this stuff. So it was a really fun theater experience. So then I had to go back and see it a second time. Saw it with my dad. Blessed of the same theater experience. Even better movie this time. I think the second time around. I mean, just the things that they do in this movie. The story, it's almost like how we'll talk about in a minute. Star Wars kind of harkens back to A New Hope in terms of the storyline, but being its own story. This kind of harkens back to the first Rocky movie and being that kind of story, but on its own with a new character. It has Sylvester Stallone's best performance in a movie ever.
Which is why I am interested in seeing the movie that you said that. Because I don't typically like
get nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this movie. He's outstanding. Michael B. Jordan is great as
Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah. Sylvester Stallone. I know it sounds crazy. See the movie and you'll understand because, I mean...
That's a tall order.
There's moments in this movie that borderline brought me to tears. I mean, it's an emotional journey through this movie. It transcends that sports genre and becomes this whole other thing that I can't really say too much without spoiling. It's well directed, very well directed and well shot. There's a scene in this movie, and it's not really a spoiler, that I had heard before I went and saw it, that there was a boxing match that took place in one take. So I'm watching the movie, and there's one at the very beginning that's kind of one take, but it's very short. So I was like, all right, I mean, yeah, it was one take, but it didn't last that long. So later in the movie, however, is when the actual one take boxing match takes place, because it's I mean, it's not a full boxing match by any means, but it's a round and a half. Boxing round is 3 minutes, and then it's probably a 5-minute total scene that's one take.
Impressive.
It's a little bit before the fight, you know, when they're shaking hands and going back to their corner, and you know, you got Sylvester Stallone as Rocky giving them like advice and stuff in the corner. Then they box or match, the bell rings, they go back to their corners, they're, you know, wiping up their faces and getting them ready for the next round, and they go into the next round, and then a knockout happens in that round about halfway through. It's all one take, no cuts or anything. It's stunning, really, because at one point somebody starts bleeding. So how they do that is just...
Is it real? Is it not?
Or reading afterwards was that when he first starts bleeding, they computer effects. But when the camera pans in a moment, they had somebody rush into the ring and put fake blood on there. So the fact that the camera never really cut, it would just happen to move for long enough. I mean, I think
a lot of coordination.
I think that it took 14 takes to do, and this was the 12th take, because I mean it's about, they've got extras, they've got a bunch of extras. You know, they've got the two main characters that are boxing. They've got Rocky. They got Sylvester Stallone on one side and the Creed's girlfriend. They got them in his corner, and then you got the other person's team in his corner. So you got all these like central characters that are part of the scene, plus all of the extras, probably 1,000, all trying, and you know, the camera operator,
right,
to be inside the ring with them. You know, it's incredible.
Do you know how many days it took to film that?
It was all in one day.
14 takes.
Yeah.
Of a scene like that in one day.
Mm-hmm.
That is an exhausting day.
Yeah, it seems like it was. And you know, it's got... I don't want to say you have to be a fan of the Rocky genre or the Rocky movies by any stretch to enjoy this movie, but you know, they've got like the Rocky theme is very recognizable, and it's kind of remixed in this movie. And then there's a moment that hit me way deep down in the last fight where they sort of bring the old one right back. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they do that, I was like, oh my god, it was like nostalgia and then some. I can't get enough of this movie. I really want to see it again. It's such a great movie. Number 2, I want to say that it fought for number 1, but it was a very brief fight. It was a knockout in the first round.
Nobody fights.
It was the closest to fighting for number 1 of any movie on here, but it didn't really stand.
I had a very brief fight with Mad Max, and I was like, "What am I thinking?"
Mine might have been a little bit longer, but I was like, "Yeah, I can't. I'm not even gonna bother trying to go there." But you have to see this movie.
Okay.
Anybody who hasn't seen it yet, it's got to see.
Well, that's what we should do. So when do awards start?
The Oscars are mid-February, I think. So.
All right. So we got approximately 6 weeks. Let's start trading film. They'll tell you something. You tell me something. Right. And we'll get stuff done.
Because you recommended The Big Short before we came on air.
And Mr. Holmes is good.
Yeah. So
we'll watch that.
So before we get to our number 1, we'll hold people in suspense because I know they have no idea what we're picking for number 1.
Not a clue.
We'll do a couple honorable mentions here. So the way that I made my list was I came up with my original 21, 22, 23 films, whatever I had. Immediately I had 8 or 9 that were like, all right, these have got to be on the list. So then it's like I had about 4 films that really battled for 10th. They were really going after that 10th spot. But before that, I kind of cut it down a little bit. So I had my original 20, then I cut that down to like 9 that I had in my list. And I was like, all right, let's cut some more off here. So I made another cut, and then about 7 films made that cut. And then about 4 of those really
cut.
Yeah, and about 4 of those really competed for 10th place. So the ones that were close to 10th, American Sniper, which
Yeah,
I don't remember when I saw that movie because they had a
that
more.
was good.
It kind of had a Revenant kind of release where it was released in December and then went
Slow.
wider later on. I just don't really remember, so I don't want to put it on the list and be like, oh, I saw that movie actually in December sometime of last year. But probably deserves to be on this list because that's a great movie. Spectre we talked about, fought for number 10, and Spotlight fought for
I'm
number 10.
surprised that Spectre didn't make your top 10 because you were raving about that.
Yeah, I just, it's one of those things. I don't know. It's just
I mean, it's
too
like,
many movies.
There's so little that separates
Yeah.
some of these.
Yeah.
At any rate, somebody's got to be number 11 and 12.
The top, I mean, those bottom like 9, 10, the top 3 honorable mentions probably all have the same score. Like they're all probably between 4 and 4.5. They're in there somewhere, like 4.25 for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's really hard to pick one because it's like, all right, which one did I enjoy? Oh, I kind of all enjoyed these the same. So now what do I use?
What criteria?
So that's why I went with It Follows, just to be able to have something different on my list. Something that wasn't a blockbuster movie. And Spotlight was the last film because I really enjoyed that one as well.
So I built 5 out because I just some of these I just couldn't go without saying. I'll say the ones that you expect to be on this list first. Sicario's on here for me. Spotlight and The Big Short I put on here. The Big Short would have been higher, I think. It's a documentary mixed with a regular film in the kind of in a Wolf of Wall Street way,
Right.
except a little bit less filmy. Wolf of Wall Street was even more of a proper film.
I hate that movie.
Really, I liked it quite a bit.
I hate that movie. I know I'm like the only one on the planet. I can't stand Wolf of Wall Street.
Because of who? What?
It's overly long. You get the same thing over and over again. I don't care about watching people do drugs over and over again.
It's such a fun time.
I
with that
never
movie.
cared about this movie. Like
I love how just overtly rude and self-centered.
See that part? I was like, this is just. I hate all of these people. I don't care. And I was on board for about an hour and a half because of Leo's performance.
Mm-hmm.
But then
there's a lot that could trimmed, I think.
So that's the only part of the movie I like is his performance. But man, I hate the rest of it.
And I didn't need to see Jonah Hill's dick. Could have passed.
You think?
Yeah. At any rate, so yeah, Spotlight, Big Short, Sicario, and here's the 2 that you probably didn't expect to be on my list at all. Furious 7. Made the honorable mentions. It almost made spot number 10, and I'll tell you why it didn't. I'll say that now. Spot number 10 was Southpaw for me. Southpaw was a sports movie that I liked, that I was surprised that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I made that list. And Furious 7 being one of my guilty pleasures, maybe in the way that Jurassic World is for you, I wouldn't have ever considered it to win any awards or anything, but they did such a phenomenal job of giving a send-off to Paul Walker that I just...
Yeah.
A guy who didn't care about Paul Walker, and I'm sitting there going, wow, guys, this is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that really Furious 7 made that second cut I was talking about. So that second group, you can finish yours and I'll go in further.
And then my last, which I think you didn't mention it, but I think you would be surprised to find it didn't make my list, was In the Heart of the Sea. I am
surprised it didn't make your list. I did not like that movie very much, but...
The trouble I had with that ultimately was that it tells, I don't know how to explain it. It's not a thrill ride in quite the same way that some of these others were, and that's a lot of what I like about a movie is how much fun is it to watch. And this movie, the first half of it, spends a lot of time kind of instructing the viewer on what it's like to live and work on a ship, and what it's like to be a whaler in particular. And that was really exciting. And then the tone, and we knew this going in, but the tone of the movie dramatically. That's dramatically and drastically in one word. Patented. Drastically changes.
Pretty sure just saying patented does not patent anything.
Copyright 2015. We move into a totally different world of the shipwrecked world. Now it's a survival story. And the tone...
so boring.
The tone shift. I think you could have done, assuming that these were two unrelated movies, a movie about whaling and a movie about being shipwrecked are good movies. Putting the two together was not so good. Nevertheless, this is a story that I've been interested in for a long time, The Wreck of the Essex, and so it was really fun to see that on screen. Does it compare with other Ron Howard films like Apollo 13? Probably not. Apollo 13 was a very well stitched together story.
I really
because
like
it kind of
Apollo
had
13.
the same. You had two portions of the movie. You had the beginning where everything's good and kosher, and you're
You get
doing
some character
doing
development in
typical
there.
stuff, and then you have the second half where everybody's having to survive and everything's a disaster. Well, it's the same format, except it was stitched together better, and it
Apollo
wasn't
13
as
is
long.
not as boring.
Well, yeah, Apollo 13 wasn't as long. I think was part of it.
So, fun fact that In the Heart of the Sea almost made your top 10 list. It was briefly in consideration for my top 10 worst of the year.
Really?
It was...
So strange.
I had it on there because I originally cut that down to I cut that down to 13 movies, including In the Heart of the Sea. And I was looking at it, I was like, you know what, that doesn't really belong on here. So I cut that out and then narrowed it down from 12 to 10.
So you're saying that In the Heart of the Sea is up there with Age of Ultron, or rather down there with Age of Ultron, which I think was just, I wouldn't say it's the worst, but it's certainly not
All right,
great.
well, hold on. We'll get to Age of Ultron in a second.
Okay, I'm just, we're starting to wander all around the edges of the map here.
All right, so the ones that made the second cut that never really competed for 10th, but they at least were closer, was Bridge of Spies, which I enjoyed. The Gift, which I think is a very underrated movie. Ant-Man, which I thought was fun. And Fury 7, which we talked about.
Right.
And then the ones that were on the original list but never really stood a chance were Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, which
Sigh.
was...
I like parts of that movie.
I'm not going to sit there and call it a bad movie because I do enjoy the movie. I think more than anything, it was a disappointment because I went in with such high expectations based on previous movies.
Well, first Avengers was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I was disappointed by it, but I don't hate the movie at all. I would watch it again. I enjoy watching the movie. Everest is on that list, Southpaw's on that list, and Beasts of No Nation is on that list.
Yeah, Beasts of No Nation made my very original list of movies to consider. It just it's a good movie, but I don't know. There's something about it that made it. Maybe just because it's hard to watch.
Yeah, it is very hard to watch.
I mean, this is one of those movies.
It's not enjoyable.
That's talking about a real tragedy that's happening as we speak. Yeah, it makes it a hard watch. Kind of like Blood Diamond and movies
Blood
like
Diamond
that.
dealt with a similar subject matter, but I thought it was a little bit more fun. Not fun,
Well,
more
you're
enjoyable.
not following
more enjoyable to watch.
The kids,
Right.
That's what was really movies where kids get hurt. Really,
Yeah.
well, they might be sort of cinematically dramatic and in big film, have some sort of value in that way. They get at my heart.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to the future cop. I mean, I definitely understand stuff like
hard.
that. So.
And so I digress. But anyway,
So time for number one.
Star Wars.
Oh, I'm going 50 Shades of Grey. No, I'm just kidding. 50 Shades of Grey is number one on the wrong list.
You gave me a hiccup for a half a second. Dude.
No, it's got to be Star Wars.
Star Wars. I cannot believe how much I love this movie. I knew I was going to like it.
Squeaking a lot.
Yeah, it is. You want some WD-40? I knew rather that I was going to like the movie. I just hands down knew I was going to like it. But the excitement that it still gives me. I saw it for the third time last night in 2 or 3 weeks now, and I was still looking forward to moments. There were a few surprises, like the explosion. This is not really that big of a spoiler. There's a TIE fighter that blows up in the desert, and you don't expect it to blow up, and it still made me jump in my seat. And I was like, "This is a good movie.
Yeah.
Like this is elements of a good movie."
The reason it's number one, I mean, because when we're talking about the number one, we're talking about the film of 2015.
Yes.
And not only...
If you forgot every other movie...
Not only
what
is it
could
a
you
good
remember?
movie, but the way that this movie affects everybody in terms of society and culture and how many people were excited for this movie, how many people loved it, how many people liked it but had problems with it, whatever. This was the movie of 2015. This will be the one that is remembered for the longest.
It has broken record after record
Oh, yeah.
after record. The most movie made in pre-sale, or money made in pre-sales, the most money made in a weekend, the fastest movie to hit $1 billion. It's going to pass Titanic.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
I read that this morning. I mean, Yeah.
I think
That's
it'll pass. I think it'll pass
astonishing.
Avatar too.
Well, I thought, isn't Titanic?
No, Avatar's above Titanic.
So what's the reason why Titanic was important? Just because it's another landmark film?
Yeah.
I thought it was a record holder.
No,
The most recent. Then I guess is
Avatar is 2.7 billion worldwide.
I see.
So I think it'll pass that.
It has to. I mean, it's the rapidity that.
I think it'll make it a billion in the United States.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's at 600 something now. I mean, it's still got months probably to play. So I think it'll definitely. But
yeah, I would not be surprised if Star Wars is still playing mid to late January.
The last movie. I mean, all movies that I gave 5 out of 5 made this list, but this I gave 5 out of 5 too, because man, I love this movie, and I know I see the problems that some people have with it, but
got problems just like every other movie.
I don't necessarily have an issue with the problems as much as some people do.
I was just so ecstatic just to sit in a movie theater and hear that theme and to see that opening title sequence a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I was just like, it's happening!
Yeah.
You know, I just couldn't...
The anticipation.
Couldn't live with it.
And the film lives up to it. I mean, I went in with such high expectations, and I didn't want to because I didn't want to be disappointed.
Right, and I was terrified the same way you were. And when there was a moment we kept looking at each other like, it's happening, look at this thing that's going on. Every second of every
it's like this. It's not disappointing me, and then I'm like, okay, well, there's a part I don't like that much, and then things start happening, and I'm like, I'm on board 110%.
It's one of these things where there are moments that aren't great, but the average is so high.
Oh yeah, and man, there's so many memorable scenes. I mean, I've seen it 3 times as well. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw it 1 or 2 more times.
For sure.
I mean,
I want to see it at least once in 3D and at least once in IMAX. Well, if that's the same time, that's fine.
The last time I saw it was in IMAX 3D, and I'm not a big 3D person at all. But I mean, it was good to see in IMAX more for the sound than anything. That crisper sound. Wow, what a movie! I mean,
so I
just have a blast with this movie.
I have 2 quibbles, 2 quibbles in scenes and 1 quibble in story. And I don't know. How do you want to spoilers? No.
No spoilers.
All right, then
I won't.
There are 2. Then I will say, I will just say this, and then you can watch it and probably put 2 and 2 together. There's one character that they just didn't get right again. There's a few tonal elements in the way a couple characters interact with each other that seemed a little silly, and then
we're gonna talk about this off air because I'm not sure. What we're about.
And then the plot. The plot and the story kind of had a little too many echoes for me. After that,
doesn't bother me. I like
right. Well, these. I mean, look how far I'm having to reach for these.
Here was the thing with the thing about the plot being too similar to the original Star Wars movie, which I understand people's point there, but to me, they went so far off tone in the prequels that everybody hated them. They had to bring this back to. I don't necessarily want Episode 8 to echo Empire.
Right.
However, I needed this almost to echo A New Hope because it brought it back into that tone.
Like, remember that detour we took? We're back on the highway.
Yeah, we're back where we need to be. So that's why that doesn't bother me in the slightest. I mean, I was
a little, as the movie went on, and I'm kind of looking around like, is this deja vu? I was a little uncomfortable with it the first time around. Now that it's had time to sink in, I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing.
Even problems that I had with it the first time have become less problems for me. I mean, I have coworkers that didn't like the movie at all, and I've wasted hours at work defending this film. I will defend it to my dying breath. I love it, and
this is a movie deserving of a defense. Like, if anyone says,
because like we said, Jurassic World,
But when you got a movie, I mean, making this kind of economic strides that it is, and the money that's bringing in, it's kind of hard to say in the face of all that. Yeah, this movie sucked or whatever.
Yeah,
have your quibbles, have your problems with plot, story, characters, whatever. But acknowledge the fact that the world is eating this movie.
Oh, and I would say a solid 75% at least really enjoy this movie. I'd say 60%.
Well, for me, it easily takes the spot of best Star Wars for me.
It still doesn't get there.
I'll tell you, the main thing is so visually beautiful. The retro kind of return to your roots sort of thing with showing the Star Destroyers and stuff like that. That was so much fun for me. And Kylo Ren is just
great villain.
Awesome.
Great villain.
And what's it with Adam Driver is the actor's
Yeah.
name? I didn't know about him before this movie, and he's just I want more of Adam Driver. He's great. It's so much fun.
I'm still in love with Daisy Ridley because she's gonna be my
She's pretty.
celebrity crush from now on because
she's got this kind of childlike naivety about her that's kind of super great. And she puts the helmet on her head and she's eating lunch in the beginning, and she just because all of a sudden looks like a child. Like I was like, she's great. She's just kind of quirky and
seems
fun.
Yeah. But yeah, she's great in this movie, and that character, it's hard to do a really strong female character because a lot of the times when they try and do that, like I'm not against having female leads in like an action movie or something like that, but a lot of times it just doesn't seem believable.
It doesn't come off very well.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not that I have a problem with it, and I'm not saying that women
You just need to do it
can't
well.
do, but you have to do it well, and sometimes they take it too far, and it's like
Who's
a man can't even do that. So I'm having trouble believing that a woman has the strength to overpower those three large men. Like,
oh, okay. Well,
I
the
don't
good
buy
example is frick, what's her name? The Scarlett Johansson in the
Yeah.
Avengers. She's one of my least favorite sort of female anythings
Yeah,
recently.
but that's how a lot of those like female-led action movies are. Is characters like that just are believable.
Whereas, I'm going to forget her name. Ridley. Ripley, rather.
Yeah,
Ripley.
from Alien.
Alien. What's that actress's name? Human
I
IMDb.
had it in my head until you mentioned her
Until
name.
I said it. She is an example of just a kick-ass female lead, and you don't feel.
Pissing me
Look
off.
it up. You don't feel at all like
No,
this
I
is
should be able to
unbelievable.
get this without.
It's
Oh
on the tip of
my
my tongue.
god! It's
She
Sigourney
is
Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver.
I got it without looking it up.
And that's she. I'm stuttering now. She is. She put herself, or however she got it. She became a science fiction staple,
Right.
where she started showing up in all these other projects later on. She showed up in Cabin in the Woods, which has a kind of a science fiction theme. I know you don't like it. She showed up in Galaxy Quest, which is a spoof of a Star Trek, which was just so funny. And I love that she got it. She nailed it, and she stuck the landing. Kate Mulgrew, who plays Captain Janeway in Star Trek, is another example of. I think you may not like it. That's fine, but she's another great female lead in a typically male-dominated genre. And then you come to I don't know some of the more modern.
Yeah,
actresses
but
that aren't so
Rey
great.
is everything I want in a female lead.
Who played Padme? What's her
Natalie
name?
Portman.
Natalie Portman didn't do so good, in my opinion.
No.
And she was supposed to be that strong female character.
Yeah.
To the point where she's leading a planet, for heaven's sake,
Yeah.
So it can be really poorly done, and it can be really excellently done. And Rey did really well.
Yeah.
Also, they had the chief sort of stormtrooper general, whatever she was a
Oh yeah, she was a
really
woman
female
too. She
actress.
was underused.
Yeah.
Do you recognize who that was?
No.
It's
It's just
Brienne from Game of Thrones.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I want her to come back, and they sort of alluded to her somehow being having her demise.
Oh yeah, that is a great scene. I love that little back and forth that they have there. I won't spoil it, but it's
At any rate, just 10 for 10, 5 out of 5, whatever you want to say for Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely. It's a movie. I mean, come on.
It's hard not to be.
I like I said, Creed briefly fought, but there was no way. There was no way. I mean, Star Wars blew my mind in so many ways.
Do you remember when there was a brief moment where they wanted to release Star Wars in the summer instead? There was worries in the upper ups of the studios that there was going to be a leak of the plot.
Huh.
And because, as we know now there are so many little important things that would spoil the movie for people.
Which is why when we actually reviewed the movie, we had like 3 minutes where we weren't talking about spoilers and be like, guys, we can't do this anymore.
The rest is
the next 25 minutes, you need to turn it off if you haven't seen it because it was so hard to talk about without spoiling it.
So there was a moment where J.J. Abrams was like, can we release it in the summer instead? And they ultimately decided not to. Do you think releasing it in the summer would have changed anything? Do you think, because now you cut out 6 months of buildup?
I think it would have made less money just because there's more competition. I guess is where I'm going to put it. All the other Star Wars films have been released. in the summertime. They've all been released in May. May is the month of Star Wars, and that's when Episode 8 is released. Is next May, or May 2017. So a year and a half from now.
Which they've already started filming.
Yes, so we're actually getting that. So, I mean, you would have to be making all this money. Yeah. I wonder if it just never made any money, if they would just be like, you know what, maybe this wasn't a good idea, let's not make any more.
Can you imagine if Star Wars didn't make, if the day Star Wars doesn't make money is the day I'm like, well, I'm done with this world.
Yeah, no, I'm totally down. If they want to give me 1, 2, 3 Star Wars movies a year for the next 80 years of my life, then I am on board with that. I will make myself stay alive in whatever nursing home possible just to be able to see the next Star Wars.
The very next one.
Because, I mean, there's so many things you can do in this world, and I love being a part of it. And that's why Star Wars The Force Awakens is our collective number one. We had very different lists, though.
This is a fun podcast.
Yeah. I thought that they would be a little different, but I had no idea they would be. We had like 4 films in common in the whole list. But obviously we had number one in common, because...
Who wouldn't? I liked our last little run to the end there, where it was ping, 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 back and forth. It was almost
just, I happen to have Creed up there at the top.
If you hadn't had Creed, or you moved it down a little bit, we would have had, 3 films identical?
Yeah, I think, because...
Have we done that quite before? Had such a high opinion of the same set of movies?
I don't think so. I think other lists have been pretty different. Because, like, when we were doing Spielberg, I had, like, Saving Private Ryan and films like that up there, and you don't like that movie very much, so... That was a different list, and then that's our only top 10 list we've done. We did top 5 summer movies at one point and talked about that. But yeah, because you had Mad Max at 2 and The Martian at 3, and I had those at 3 and 4. So if I had had Creed lower, then it would have been 1, 2, and 3 all the same. But I couldn't put Creed any lower. But that's it for this podcast, I think.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, this is our last episode of our first season, our 2015
we're recording
season.
In 2016, but...
Yeah, it's January
about
2nd.
2015, so that's 12 episodes.
Yeah.
We're going to call that a season, I think.
Yeah, we're still working on the whole getting it on other places to make it more accessible thing.
We're learning slowly.
We're trying to figure... We're new to this. We're trying to figure out exactly how to do this. We know that we need to be somewhere other than just on YouTube, because it's a lot harder to find. It's not the best
suited place for us.
Yeah. So we're trying to, things like iTunes and whatever the Google equivalent is, or
Google Music and Stitcher and Pocket Cast.
I don't even know what all that stuff is, but sure. But yeah, so we're working on that. I don't think it'll be this episode, but maybe going into the second season we can figure something out going with that.
Yeah.
Looking forward to...
Let us know what you want us to do if there's anything out there. We want audience feedback, if there is any audience.
Yeah. If any of you actually hang around to the end, well, I've noticed a couple have listened all the way through.
To you few, hello.
Yeah. Because I think mostly we just do this little end bit for us, because I don't think a lot of people are actually even... A lot of people will tune in for like 20 minutes or so, and then...
We need to throw in some Easter eggs, so if someone listens to the very last second...
Which is the problem with YouTube, is you just can't get somebody sitting there for long enough on YouTube, which is why you need it somewhere where people can listen to it while they're in the car or something like that. But to those of you who actually sit for an hour on YouTube, congratulations.
Often more than an hour.
We shoot for an hour, and we never actually make it an hour. I don't really know what the plan is for the next few episodes. I know next week we won't have one, because I still will be gone. But
we got a lot of new movies coming out. Probably.
I'm looking forward to 2016. I did
do some reviews of The Revenant and The Hateful Eight.
If you see The Hateful Eight, we'll review that, because I saw that, really enjoyed it. That would have fought for number 10 if I had seen it in 2015. It's right in that 4 1/4 range. So it's like It would have fought right there. So yeah, we can review The Hateful Eight, The Revenant when we see that. That comes out next week. So maybe the week after that we'll do like talk about Leonardo DiCaprio or something like that.
That'd be fun.
Or because the week after that, 13 Hours, Michael Bay's new film comes out. Maybe we talk about Michael Bay, because I got a feeling you don't like Michael Bay very much.
I'm conflicted about Michael Bay, to say the least.
Because I really enjoy guilty pleasures. Some of his, like the Bad Boys movies and Armageddon, movies like that. I really, really like. And then you get something like any of the Transformers movies. Well, I enjoy the first Transformers movie a little bit, but the other ones are pretty terrible.
Titanic is probably...
Michael Bay doesn't do Titanic.
Did he do?
No, that was James Cameron.
James Cameron, that's what I was mixing the two.
Michael Bay did Pearl Harbor.
I like parts of that.
I like the actual Pearl Harbor part of Pearl Harbor, but I mean the rest.
The 2 hours of other stuff could have been lopped off.
But yeah, so we'll figure out an episode to do.
It might be
once
fun
we
to
come
do
back.
a sort of a speculatory what's coming out in 2016. Kind of get excited about.
I did a top 10 most anticipated on my website. There's a lot of sequels and franchise kind of films coming out. There's not
as many fresh faces.
I struggle to say original because I'm one of those people who thinks a sequel can be original because you get a new person, especially if it's like a new director, you get a new ideas in there, and that's why sequels can be fresh sometimes. But, you know, there aren't a whole lot of like first kind of new films in there that I can, at least not ones that I'm really looking forward to yet. And the other problem is that you don't hear about things that are going to be Oscar contenders next year. You don't hear about those films until closer to their release. So, you know, things that I'm looking forward to are like your Batman versus Supermans and your Star Wars and your Captain Americas, and those are the films that I'm more looking forward to than anything else. Because those are the ones you hear.
Looking forward to Batman and Superman.
Really? Even though
I'll tell you why. This podcast's running long. But you guys love us, right? The trailer gives away too much.
It does. I have a lot of problems with the trailer, but I'm still looking forward to it.
And if the movie is anything like the trailer, I'm not going to like it. I do like the first half of the newer trailers. They're showing the political kind of back and forth.
That's what I'm saying. If the movie is more like the first half of the trailer, I'm going to love that movie.
Yes. I want to see the politics.
Supposedly, there's been like a screening for people, a couple critics, you know, like a first cut of the film. Supposedly they really liked it, so we'll see where that leads to.
I don't like Wonder Woman. I just don't.
I don't like.
She's not. Maybe she was great in her day and age or something in terms of what people wanted to see. I just can't stand her. She's just an obnoxious character.
I know nothing about Wonder Woman, to be honest. I mean, she's never been in a movie, so I've
Let me just boil it down to the simple thing: the fact that she is somehow protected from danger, and yet she wears almost nothing, pisses me off. And it's not like a feminist thing or something like that. It's just common sense, you know. Yeah. She's got this Amazon quality.
I know I'm probably in the minority. I don't like Superman as a character, which is one of the reasons I'm one of the only ones that liked Man of Steel, because it added a little bit more complexity to Superman, which I needed, because otherwise Superman is just a boring character.
He's a god that can do anything.
It's boring.
And so how do we...
I don't enjoy any of the older Superman films. One, because they're
the Superman films aren't great.
Dated. And
I think the best to come out of Superman is probably
character.
The comics, which I have not read, but my sister has and has told me good things. And then the animated series have been really good.
I love Batman as a character, because that's a much more complex and interesting character.
Well, and he's more grounded.
Yeah.
So the problem I have with Superman, and I think is easily fixed, quite honestly, is if you don't tell the stories about him struggling to be human exactly, you tell the struggle in a more almost biblical sort of way. You know, more philosophy, more about, you know, I don't know, Dr. Manhattan almost. You know how Dr. Manhattan, remember, did you get into that?
That Watchmen?
The Watchmen, yeah.
That movie.
I watched it once, but I liked some concepts from it. Dr. Manhattan basically becomes a godlike figure and then suddenly has to decide, well, do I care about humans?
Right.
And to be honest with you, that should be Superman's dilemma, because he's grown up with humans, and when he starts discovering his true history, he should start to wonder, should I even live here?
Yeah, I mean,
should I go fly to another friggin'
At Man of Steel, I like that he has to make that choice to save the people he has to kill. I like that aspect of it. I like that added complexity to Superman, because otherwise it's just boring to me. I like Batman a lot more. But we've got to end this podcast because we're going on.
All right.
So we'll talk to you in a couple weeks once we figure out our topic. Next week, definitely not anything. The week after, we'll figure that out when we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Reviews on The Hateful Eight and The Revenant, once we've both seen those and are together again.
Yeah, check out the new website. Nice and revitalized.
Oh, yes, I did completely redo
GeorgeMovieGuide.com.
logo
and everything.
New logo. Everything's a little bit more streamlined, professional looking now. Really liked what I did with it. Not to toot my own horn, but looks a lot better. It looks a lot less cheesy and less.
Well, it doesn't
cluttered.
Look like someone just created on Windows 98 or something.
Because that's basically what I did. I just thought this was going to be something, you know, from my friends and family.
Starting to grow.
And then it grew more than I ever thought it was going to. And I'm like, okay, I should probably fix some of these things.
Polish it up a little bit.
So definitely check out GeorgeMovieGuide.com. Follow it on Twitter at Jordan's Guide. Follow Greg on Twitter at
Greg Crafted, GRAGCRAFTED.
We've enjoyed talking to you. We've enjoyed doing this for you in 2015. Look forward to doing it more in 2016. Hope you've all had a great new year, great holidays, safe, and all that stuff. And we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.